Hello everyone. Today I am going to be talking about how you're able to overclock XTX memory way further than most people thought. Now, like I said in my last video, this is from what I can for me, this is for Samsung memory. I don't have a card with Hynix memory. So I don't know uh, how well Hynix memory overclocks with this sort of like hack, quote unquote. So pretty much the way that this works is you have two cables connected to your card, which enables your card to lock its memory at a specific frequency without boosting up and down. Normally, when you have one cable connected, it'll downclock to 900 megahertz. With two cables connected, it's locked at like 2476 or something like that. So it's locked at that speed with two cables connected. With one cable connected, it will downclock to 900 megahertz. And something in that pipeline where it downclocks and upclocks and all that, when you set a memory frequency high, like right now I'm running at 2770. If you set this with one cable connected and what you allowed the memory to downclock and upclock and do its thing, it would not be stable. For some reason, something happens where it will, quote unquote, what I call it is gray screen. It literally will just give you this gray screen and restart your system. So something is broken, in my opinion, with their downclocking behavior on XTX memory. Now, why this hasn't been fixed? Probably because it hasn't exactly been like, normally if somebody set a high memory frequency, they probably and it's unstable, they would probably just assume that it is an unstable memory like it just the memory simply cannot do that frequency without being unstable. That is just simply not true. Which actually took me a very long time to figure out because I had the same mindset of, okay, it's at my memory's acting really weird when I set this certain frequency, meaning it's just simply not stable. That just is not the case. With XTX memory, you're able to get uh almost 200 megahertz out of it, where a lot of people really think that you're only able to get up to like 2600 without like weird stuff going on. Well, I'm here to tell you that you can push your actually, sorry, my bad, almost 300 megahertz higher than advertised. Yeah, 2500 to almost 2800. So, yeah. And here's the proof. These are three benchmarks right over here. And this is proof that it actually does increase performance in games. This is only one game because if I do want to do more games, but today I didn't have the time to. I've been very busy recently, and I just didn't have the time to sit down and test like 5 or 6 games. But I will make a video doing that. I will, because I'm sure in some games you're going to get more benefit, in some games you're going to get less benefit. Now, so here we have Cyberpunk 2077. And by the way, you do have to set a 14 megahertz offset to get like 2770. So technically I have to put in 2784 and then it sets 2770. Why it does that, I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason, but so here are three. This benchmark is pretty much what I did was, if we look at MSI Afterburner, I set everything back to stock except for power limit. I up power limit and put the fan profile on, and that's it. So I had my own user-defined fan profile, and just power limit enabled. Everything else was stock 2500, and then core clock was like 2900, 2800, something like that, and core voltage was just at 1150. So just left that like that. This right here is the same, except for I did memory clock all the way up to 2784 or 2770. That's the second screen right here, and then this screen right down here is fully overclocked to what I have. Well, actually, this is not my. Normally, I'd be running 3240, but because I was playing Dying Light the Beast yesterday, Dying Light is not a good overclocking type of game. I've said this before, but if there is a certain game that does not like agree with your overclocking settings, and it's just one game that does not agree with those settings, I think that's an outlier, in my opinion. Is if every other game you really come across is stable at the settings that you normally have, then that one game that was unstable, that's an outlier. I wouldn't necessarily say that you're totally unstable. It could be blamed by the game's engine that it runs on. But yeah, these settings are stable in 99% of games. But I see, the thing is, I had problems with the Dying Light 2 as well, where it just was not stable at like higher clocks and undervolts. And so I just ran it at like 3200 mega or 3000 megahertz and called it a day. But for every other game, I'm able to run 3240, no problems. So that's just an outlier, you know? And I'm fine with every so often having to adjust these settings for certain certain games. But going off on a tangent. Anyways, here we are with the first screenshot where everything's stock except for power limit and fan profile. And we're getting an average FPS of 75.50 FPS on average. Minimum FPS of 61.37. Max FPS of 103.22. And number of frames 4850. Now, when I set memory to 2770, we have an average of 77.42. Minimum FPS of 64.24, max FPS of 110.11, and number of frames are 4,973. So, as you can see, this is actually a pretty good difference, considering core clock was not touched at all. This is simply just memory. Now, if we go in, I'm going to look up the percent. I probably should have looked this up before starting the video, but percent difference between 75.50 and 77.42. All right. So the difference is not astounding, okay? It's about 2.5% difference in performance. However, it is a difference in performance. Something that I also realized with when overclocking memory is that it seems, or at least for my input, it could be placebo, but I don't think it is. When you overclock memory on the XTX, it feels like the card has lower input lag. Like it feels like the from the like mouse movement to screen time delay is reduced for whatever reason. But that's just me. That, you can test that out, see if you agree with me, disagree with me, but that's just my firsthand experience. But take it with a grain of salt. I mean, it could be placebo. And then this screenshot right here is fully overclocked, like, card hitting 3150 megahertz and all that good stuff. Now let's do percent difference between 75.50 and 81.22. Okay, so the difference is about 7.2% from that. Now, remember, this is actually going to be much faster than a stock XTX, because I'm also, this top left-hand corner benchmark was done with unlocked power limit. So whatever clock is set, like let's say in MSI Afterburner, I set the max clock to 2800, it's going to be pegged at 2800, that whole benchmark. With the stock XTX, you're going to see more like 2500, 2600 normally, especially without an undervolt and all this. So all of these benchmarks are still going to be much faster than a stock XTX. So a stock XTX will probably get like 68, 69 FPS, maybe even lower. I don't know. But yeah, even the top left-hand corner has unlocked power limits, so it's able to just boost up to the highest possible boost bin without worrying about being power limited or anything. So with unlocked power limit to completely overclocked with the unlocked power limit, you can gain about 7.2%. And in my opinion, that's actually a pretty decent difference, considering that the difference between like a 5070 Ti and a 5080 is like 15%. So pretty much with the memory clock, with the core clock, from a stock XTX to just like, if you just plopped a regular XTX in your system and ran this benchmark, this XTX that I have in my system is probably about 20% faster than that XTX, which can be a whole upgrade. That could be a whole, Well, really, at that point, you're getting up into 4090 territory. So, and then if you also like optimize game, you can get a very close to 4090 sort of experience with an XTX. Obviously, there's caveats where you like have to get the EVC and all this and that, but it's just like a fun journey trying to squeeze out as much performance as possible, and not well, and also the XTXs are really, like a lot of people would disagree, but these cards are built very well in my opinion. Like they're able to handle quite a bit of a beating. As you can see, I run mine unlock power limit every day of the week. Core clocks going to the freaking moon. I'll see 32 40 megahertz all the time, and then with the memory overclock as well, you just get that much more performance out of it. It's like if you're able to get an XTX for cheap, it's really, like, in my opinion, a no-brainer. Now I do want to get like an XFX or something, or something with like a bigger heatsink than my Red Devil, because I want to, or even like I'm thinking about maybe an Asus TUF, because the Asus TUF has a gigantic heatsink, and so with that heatsink, I'm hoping that you're just able, like, I would be able to have those high clocks without necessarily overheating. Now the way that I have this set up right now is that I have two fans at the bottom blowing air onto the GPU, so I'm able to keep my temperatures relatively good. But in some games, the temp will get a little out of hand. But from what I can tell, I haven't really had any degradation. I'm sure the undervolt has helped with that, because you're basically telling the card it can only take this amount of voltage. It might go up a little bit, but when you say that the card can have 1120 volts or whatever, it will try to use that. So when you have an undervolt, your card will just simply use less voltage. Yeah, so definitely recommend, if you have an XTX, maybe trying this out. I would really love if AMD would come out with a fix for the memory downclocking behavior, because clearly there's something wrong with that. If I'm able to get 2770 completely stable, but with only one cable connected, I'm only able to get like 2600. So it's not that we all have shit memory, it's that something is wrong with the downclocking behavior. Something is wrong with that. I don't know what it is, but I have a feeling it has something to do with the voltage switching is not fast enough. Or something along those lines. Something with the voltage going to the chips is not able to like react fast enough for the change in frequency. So yeah, because that's the only thing that I could really that could make sense, is that voltage is something weird is going on with voltage there. Because if the boost spins were or if the downclocking behavior was normal or correct, then we would be able to get 2770 and still downclock perfectly fine to 900 megahertz. But that's just not the case. You have to have two cables connected to your card to keep that frequency locked at, at 25, or, you just keep it locked, and all is well. So, yeah, a very weird thing that, like, I feel like not a lot of people even tried or realized, but with all of my madness and my endeavors to figure out how to get as much possible performance out of this card, I found out through just tinkering, and messing around with it. And stuff like this is kind of aggravating, because for this entire time, I really wish that there was a fix or something, or maybe it's a hardware issue where, like, they're not able to change it. But yeah, so give it a try. There's a very good likelihood that your card could do this. But it is going to have your frequency is going to be locked, but it's not a big deal. Especially if your goal is to get as much performance out of your card that you possibly can. So, give it a shot. Let me know down in the comments how it goes, and I will see y'all in the next video. See ya.